So now another slight variation on the animation we did earlier. I'm going to grab my text box, come over here, make it good size, 100, type in Fullerton, all caps, and make this a little bit smaller. And go ahead, align to stages on, so I'll go ahead and do the vertical and the horizontal. Oh, I got to select my selection tool and horizontal. I'm going to break this apart, Command B. Then I'm going to distribute it, Command Shift D. That puts everything into its own format. I know that as soon as I make this into an animation, it's going to use the frame duration, the frames per second, as the length of the animation. So I'm going to go ahead and cheat here a little bit. I'll just go ahead and type in 60 and I'll hit return. And now I'll select all of these and I'll go to the insert drop down menu and create a classic tween and hit OK, and it generated up to 60. Now 60 frames a second is fast. I want it to last 2 seconds, so I'm just going to drop this back down to 30 frames. So that'll mean that the animation will last for 2 seconds. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is I want to add a beginning frame and an end frame. So there's a couple of ways of doing this, 3 ways actually. I can click and drag without letting go and then do an F6. Or the equivalent of an F6, let me do an undo, is to do a right click on the selection and slide down to where it says convert to keyframes or insert keyframes. Both will work. Okay, so the other option is to hold the shift key down, click on the first frame, move away, hold the shift key down, and then click on the bottom frame, and then do an insert keyframe or an F6 as well. Both will work. That'll work. And then the other option, I'm doing an undo in here, is to select all the frames at the beginning. So I'm doing it the same way I did before. I'm clicking, holding the shift key down, clicking again. Now I'm going to have the option or the alt key down. I'm depressing that, and I'm just making a copy of those to the end. So there's 3 ways of getting the keyframes on the back end. So the other thing I want to do is I want to make a set of frames so that I can get these to move all at once. So again, uh, you can do it this way. You can select the frames over here all the way across. I'm going to do an F6 to insert the keyframe. I can do the same thing over here and just keep on doing that. Or the other option is to click and drag, hold the option key down, and drag that to 15 and then drag that to 20. It doesn't matter how you do it. Okay, so on the middle frame over here of this grouping in here, I'm going to select all my artwork, and with my cursor key I'm going to nudge it up to the top. And what that does is it gives me an animation where these move up and down. Okay, so let's see what it looks like. Right now everything's going to be crammed into the upper left hand corner, but you can see what the animation does. They're all individually moving at the same time. Okay, so before I forget, let's come back over here to the first frame. We're going to open up our code snippets, and we're going to take advantage of that key line that we just created. And that puts that in there. So if we run this, command return, there it is in the center. So it looks great. Okay, so let me close that. Now the other thing that I want to do is I want to make sure I put a stop over here. So I'm going to do an F6 there and right click and call up my actions. And this is referring to the canvas, and stop is kind of the predicate of a sentence, and it always has to have a parentheses, and that'll stop the animation. So let's run that and see what that looks like. And that's it. That's the whole animation. So we're done with our actions. So now what I want to do is I want to stagger these. So I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to slide this over to the 5 position. This guy lines up with the 10. That's good. That's where I want it. So I'm going to click and drag. And I'm going to slide this one so it's right underneath that keyframe. I'll do the same thing all the way down. Actually, let me reverse that because I'm moving the N first. I think I'd rather move the F first. So let's go with the F first. We'll drag this over to the 5 position. And this one lines up good. And so now I'm dragging it so that it's on top of the, whoops, it's on top of the frame right underneath it. You can also hold the Shift key down and make the selection that way. But I'm always centering it over the bottom frame. Of course, it doesn't have to be centered. If you wanted to move it even further down the line, you could stagger these to whatever distance appropriate to what you're looking for. So I'm just staggering these. Be careful not to move them into the wrong layer. And I'm just putting them so that they line up with the center dot of the one immediately underneath. Okay, so you can see it's a stair-stepping action that we want. Always going to the center of the next frame right up above it. If we scrub this, you can see what happens. This just scrubs and goes through. So if we run this, that's the animation. Pretty straightforward. If you wanted it to go backwards, to go back to where it was before, you could take this whole thing. Right now we're at 60, and I could take this and slide it way over here to 120. Make it a little further. So I'm going to go to 120. And now I've got the same duration on both sides. And in here, again, like last time, I'm going to do this backwards. So I'm going to select that. Now I'm holding the Option key down. I'm going to drag this to frame 60. I'm going to click on this and drag. I'm going to drag this over here to 65, still using that center as a reference. Click and drag. Hold the Option key down to make a copy. Go to the center. Come back over here. I'm only moving the 3 keyframes in relationship to the animation. And then I'm just centering them up on the bottom of the animation right on top. Let me hold the Shift key down. Move that over. Hold the Option key down. Make a copy. Click and drag. Option to make a copy. Go to the center. Click. Oops. Click Shift key down. Option down. Drag over to the center. Or just click and drag and then hold the Option key down to the center. It takes a little practice to get this right. And then we'll go ahead and hold the Shift key down there. Whoops. Shift key, Option, drag all the way to the end, and it's going to go to the center. And so the stop is still at the very end of the animation. If we run this, then we'll see it go forward and backwards. And that's the whole animation in relationship to how we can stagger the text.